The American Civil War and Reconstruction, Confederation versus Federation, 1860 to 1876. Historians want to identify the actors in the past, the actions they took place, and what motivated them. Actors, actions, motivations. We can analyze these actors and the actions they took by looking at the problems that they think they had. Those problems influenced the decisions they made in their lives. So we have to ask ourselves, what problems did people face, and what actions did they take to solve those problems? And that could help us understand their motivations. Over time, individuals and societies create institutions, habits or patterns of behavior that provide them with stability. Unfortunately, problems change over time, and the behaviors that we've gotten used to, the behaviors that we've made up most of our lives, don't solve the problems that we have today. New problems require new behaviors. People don't like to change. And when human behavior fails to solve problems, that is corruption. There's a breakdown in individual and social problem solving. One previous breakdown was in 1776. The colonists no longer wanted to be British subjects. They rejected divine right absolutism, a system in which God gave authority to a monarch to assign privileges to his subjects. Subjects then had limited decisions to make in their lives. The monarch, the church, the nobles made those decisions for them. The Founding Fathers, in the Declaration of Independence, announced a revolution in sovereignty, that instead of using the biblical approach of divine right absolutism, they adopted a new social contract in which God had given rights to all men. All men were created equal, endowed with by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And so everyone then had a right to citizenship. Citizens then came together to form a government. When they put this into practice, though, it didn't include all men. It meant men of property. Men of property were the citizens of the community, and they could form a government to write laws for themselves. And so they restricted freedom for others. Restricted freedom for women, restricted freedom for wage earners, restricted freedom in particular for slaves. The social contract then was a result of a compromise. The property owners got together and developed a system for their common good. They had to debate the issues, they had to talk about what the issues were, and they solved their issues by voting instead of shooting. They chose a deliberative approach rather than a violent approach to solving social problems. One of the earliest debates they had was over the difference between a confederation and a federation. They first tried a confederation, a composition in individual states in which each member state retained sovereignty. That Articles of Confederation broke down within 10 years. And the Founding Fathers went back to the drawing board, drew up a new constitution in which there was a federation, a composition of individual states in which each shared sovereignty with the central government. The central government, though, was supreme. When the Union as a whole made a decision, it was binding upon each of the member states. What changed then in 1860 for this relationship to break down? Why was it necessary for a change? Who saw a problem? What was the problem they think they saw? And then what was their possible solution? The federal Constitution took into account the fear of the central government. And so in the Bill of Rights, there was an element of local control, the 10th Amendment. All powers not delegated to the United States or prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states and the people respectively. In particular, this protected slavery. Slavery was an issue of local control. It was part of the grand compromise that got the Constitution passed. The states could not agree on the limitations of property owners. Some states put limitations on property owners and told them you may not own slaves. Other states allowed property owners to be free and allowed them to own slaves. The argument over slavery continued to fester through the first half of the 19th century. More and more countries around the world were banning or abolishing slavery. This didn't happen in the United States because of the 10th Amendment. Each individual state had the right to decide. It was their state's right. The question then was over the growth of slavery or the expansion of slavery. Free soilers wanted the West available to white free farmers and to limit the ability of property owners to own slaves. That argument over the expansion of slavery cracked the Union and ignited a civil war. And so the Confederate States of America fought a war to defend slavery. The United States of America fought a war to defend the Union. That the Constitution allowed individual states to decide about slavery in their region, but they could not force the rest of the country to expand or provide opportunities for the growth of slavery. There are three parts to this lecture: the Confederate States of America, the Civil War, and finally Reconstruction. Looking at how the Confederate States of America started a war in defense of slavery, to defend their right to own slaves. It ended with the United States of America taking away that right, abolishing the right to slavery, and establishing the principle that all people born in the United States are free citizens of the United States.